This has gotta be the fake farm Seep was talking about.
Look for a secret entrance somewhere around the barn. Maybe you can use those hooks.
Welcome to the llama farm, but instead of llamas, we're greeted with these laser-eyed chickens again. My preferred method to deal with them is, as before, waiting until they use their laser strike and then swooping in to attack afterward. A single 3-hit combo is plenty to take them out. We can also do that 1-2 particularly small ham we've been using. Either works. They're not really hard. Granted, they're probably slightly more difficult than the teddy bears. So Weston said we should try using the hooks around this area to get into the barn. If you for some reason can't find the hooks, he will say this again when you get closer to the barn. At first I thought that was a little irritating, but then I realized, not everyone might be able to spot the hooks. I make the mistake of misjudging the number of chickens in this area, and one of them sneaks up behind me. And wow, do their laser beams deal a lot of damage. I suppose I was too used to the damage that the toys dealt. I need to really be more careful. This is the first level where things can get hairy if you're not paying enough attention. Look at how breezy these transitions between hooks are.
Don't let him take your brain. This is like 54 all over again.
So we can already see that Seep was right, and there's a ton of military equipment in here, as well as a new enemy type. Some spider walkers that, instead of swinging their legs at us, fire arcing projectiles, and they fire them a lot more frequently and a lot more accurately than the rabbits do. The projectiles don't deal too much damage individually, but if you let a bunch hit you at once, they can really stack up. And the reason I'm using melee attacks instead of ranged attacks is because I wanted to demonstrate how to dodge them. How to dodge them and get in close, I mean. It's entirely possible to defeat them with melee. It's probably easier to use guns, but I didn't want to rely on the ranged combat too much, because it's very easy to use the ranged combat for most of the game without even bothering with the melee combat, and that would be a shame. My playing in Death Jr. Root of Evil is not excellent, I will admit this, but the game is really on the easy side, at least if you're an action game veteran of any sort. Maybe if you came into this expecting more of a 3D platformer than a combat-focused platformer, it would be difficult, but depending on what you do exactly, Death Jr. can be kind of a cakewalk. Picking up the weapon upgrades, for example, almost ensures that the game will be a breeze for you. Its variety in enemy types... God damn, I think I turned southern there for a second. Its variety in enemy types and locations are the best things it has to offer. I wouldn't really recommend it if you're looking for a good challenge unless you want to play on one of the higher difficulties. So as I said, my playing may not be particularly excellent, but that's because it doesn't really need to be for this game. Hell, as we've established, I'm avoiding most of the optional weaponry intentionally so that way I can make the game more interesting for myself, otherwise I might be a bit too bored. Not bored of the scenery, mind you. So a lot of these doors have enemies behind them. Well, actually all of them have enemies behind them, but only one of them has the switch we need to proceed. And because I've memorized this level, I of course knew which door we wanted. So now that we didn't run around opening all the wrong doors and flooding enemies into the room, we can get the rest of the experience points and pull the switch. If we did actually open up the wrong doors, we would of course want to open them one at a time and destroy the enemies slowly. Of course, if we opened all the doors and wanted to fight all of them at once, we could, but we might not make it out of that unscathed. So in case it isn't obvious, the game is trying to normalize these platforming transitions, where we move from one hook to the next using our hover. That's going to be very important later in the game, so they want you to get used to it now. And there's a small bit of cute, slightly clever platforming right here, where you have to use DJ's hover to move diagonally between these safe spots. It's a hazard that would be a lot less threatening with the double jump, and I think the developers knew that, and that's why it's here.
These roots are different than the others we've seen. It looks as though their power is tied to those pods.
It's smashing time.
See, this is a far, far superior introduction to the green pods, which act as switches we need to destroy to open doors. I'm not sure why they were in the sawmill at all. They don't fit there. Anyway, we can see that Fury's influence has spread down here. This is actually the first of Fury we've seen in this location. We had no idea she was here before now. But as we enter this next room, it's pretty obvious that Fury's been here. Anyway, if we head down to this lower pathway, we'll be greeted with a new enemy type and more green pods to smash. This new enemy type will fire a couple of laser shots in rapid succession straight at us, not in an arc like the other new enemy type. And this Centipede enemy can't be destroyed by our normal handgun fire. We need to use our shotgun because our handgun fire plainly doesn't break through their armor. That's why the shotgun is a mandatory weapon, because some enemies can only be damaged by it. They can still be damaged by our scythe as well, but, you know, this is a good opportunity to show what the shotgun is for. More Centipede enemies are supposed to spawn than this, but I'm running around the room methodically collecting all the experience points before we spawn those enemies, because they have a very specific trigger, and it's the stump in the middle of the room. Jumping near or on that stump is what triggers the Centipede spawning, and we might as well grab all we can before we do that. Just strafe left or right to dodge the Centipede's fire when you're fighting them one-on-one, obviously, but when there's a whole lot of them in a big circular arena, it's not quite as simple. Actually, this entire big green room might be the most Centipedes we ever see in one area. It's not like it's an uncommon enemy type, it appears a few more times, but I don't think they're ever in this much abundance again. I sure do spend a lot of time down here not triggering the enemy spawn. I think now I finally do it. So yeah, there's a whole lot of them. A whole lot of them. The shotgun deals more damage the closer we get, and it does have a minor spread, though not the kind of spread you're probably used to from video game shotguns. The shotgun also causes knockback, which allows you to fire a second time rather easily without repercussion. But as you're seeing, circle strafing by itself isn't quite enough in this scenario. We gotta do quite a bit of jumping and finagling around with the stump, using it as cover in a couple of occasions. Honestly reminds me of some of the later battles in the game. Usually the early game battles are fairly simple. And although I'm using this shotgun here because it's necessary, we're not going to be using it very much at all until we get the upgraded version. It's just, our handguns have pretty much infinite range. They can shoot as far as we can see. And if I'm going to get that close to an enemy, I already have my scythe. So there's no reason for me to prefer the shotgun. We spent a lot longer down there than I thought we would, though I suppose we did have quite a bit to talk about. Back up here, we still have 2 more green pods to destroy before the next area will unlock for us. Thankfully, the green pods are very obvious. They stick out quite easily, even in a very, grassy scenario. They literally glow. So I hate to bring up environmental transitions again, but we've already had 3 so far in this level, and we haven't even reached the 10-minute mark. We started in a barn and then lowered into a government facility, and now we're seeing that the government facility has been taken over by Fury's influence. And all of this feels very natural, like it's an active part of the world, and it's just good. It's good shit. Welcome to the SS Good Shit. DJ is your captain and I am the co-pilot.
Keep arms and feet inside the vehicle. No food or drink allowed on the tram.
nimble monkey bone.
So we just got our new melee move, and unlike the safety first and particularly small hand, the nimble monkey bone is a quality of life feature, not really a necessity like the other two. The nimble monkey bone is our new crowd control combo. It deals massive damage to a wide area. So yeah, basically an area of effect move. Instead of going 1-2 particularly small hand, we will now go 1-2 nimble monkey bone. It's also useful for some stronger enemies, such as this new one. With this new mechanical dog enemy, we want to bait him into attacking us and then use our nimble monkey bone on him, because he's vulnerable immediately after he attacks. We can also just whittle away at his health with basic strikes if you want, but the nimble monkey bone ends things much faster. But every melee move from this point on is just kind of fluff. It's useful, sure, it makes the melee combat easier, but it's not necessary, and the final melee combat move makes all melee combat in general an absolute joke. We're a long way from obtaining that final melee combat move, but when we get it, any depth that was previously had in the melee system will be completely annihilated.
We are getting strong interference from the communicators.
The type of interference that scrambles your molecules all over the ether.
Jump into the light!
Watch out for the mind-zapping rats! Those rats have tasted human brain!
So you can already see exactly how the nimble monkey bone is useful. As I said, it is a massive quality of life improvement. Far from necessary, but it makes dealing with large numbers of enemies in close range far easier. As we get deeper into the game, though, and the enemy types get more threatening, let's just say the game's difficulty curve greatly encourages ranged combat over melee combat. If you're being swarmed by rats or chickens, then sure, you can use the nimble monkey bone, but there are some enemy types in the next location that can't be so easily dealt with by this method. Here's a ranged version of that dog robot we fought earlier. The ranged version of the dog robot is a joke because he has no close range capabilities at all, which means we can just walk right up to him and slap him. The normal melee version of the dog robot, on the other hand, who we have to bait to fight, is a lot more enjoyable. We don't actually see either of them too often, but this isn't the last we'll see of them either. You may have noticed there are some shots coming from the balconies up there. I guess you could count that as an extra nuance to this fight that there were centipedes sniping at us, but I don't know, they're not all that threatening. Sure, we had to move around a little bit more, but they're far away enough that their shots take a while to reach us. Now we just need to pull all the switches to activate the teleporter, and we can go up to the upper level. And you should keep in mind, whenever I talk about strategies in this game, remember I am intentionally limiting myself. I would encourage normal people just to grab all the gun upgrades and go crazy.
Attention. Subject 51 has escaped its holding cell.
In this room, we don't really need to fight all the enemies. We can actually forego the enemies entirely, flip the switch, and just platform our way to victory. But this depends how good you are on the platforming, because these centipedes will still shoot at you while you're platforming, and they can very easily knock you off of the platforms, those being hooks in this case. So unless you're really good at the platforming, I would recommend just dealing with them anyway. It's not like they're all that hard. I think I said earlier, in general, the game is good at deterring you from skipping enemies. Even though the enemies can be skipped, it's best if you don't, because you're more likely to die trying to skip them than just fighting them. I guess this is our first example of truly curved platforming in this game, isn't it? With these hook-based objects, at least. As you can see, DJ's scythe is almost magnetically drawn to anything sparkling. So the challenge in the platforming isn't really landing on the next hook, it's when you let go of the last hook. That's what's important.
Do not be alarmed. Test subject 51 is kind and gentle.
So this area is probably my favorite set piece in the whole level. It looks starkly different from everything we've seen so far, and it's laid out in quite an interesting fashion as well. Lots of corroded platforms and pipes. It's clear the floor was melted by the acid. It offers a great in-universe justification for the platforming hazards. Again, DJ's environments are incredible. This game is really, really good at that. And the platforming in here isn't half bad either. You actually have to think about where you're going before you jump. I know that seems like kind of hollow praise, but considering most of the platforming consists of transitioning between hooks, it's something. We also get a new enemy type right here. These, things are easily knocked over by our safety first and stun locked this way. They're perhaps the greatest joke of an enemy the game has to offer. Sure, their attack looks intimidating and they can dish out damage, but when you can stun lock them so easily and consistently, it's just, you know, you can't see them as a threat. I assume we're meant to jump on that platform, but instead we can just shoot the green pods from safety, which is what we did. Still love these corroded pipes. The corroded pipes look real good. Add a lot to the atmosphere.
Do not taunt test subject 51. Sudden moves cause test subject 51 to love you too much.
And here is test subject 51. Its attacks, a big shockwave. How to deal with it? Stay as far away as possible and shoot at it. Kind of an underwhelming mini-boss if we're being perfectly honest, but at least it's unique. We never see test subject 51 anywhere else. There are a ton of small lab rats that spawn around the arena in an attempt to make the boss a little more challenging, but they honestly don't do much when you can run away from them so easily. We did run out of pistol ammo, so we'll switch to the shotgun briefly, and we need to get really close to use it, but Subject 51's almost dead anyway. And although we can now freely leave the area, we're going to deal with the rest of the rats first. Just for the extra experience, you know, and to show you the Nimble Monkey Bone in action a couple more times. Alright, here we are in the next level, which is a direct continuation of the last one. We're still in that spooky lab setting. An immediately noticeable difference about our surroundings is that there is a giant root sticking out of the wall, again proving Fury's influence has spread to this government facility, though we don't know how much. Man, the Nimble Monkey Bone is really satisfying to use against those rats. So we're going to go ahead and grab these experience pods around the room, and you may have noticed that at the end of the last level we picked up our upgraded twin pistols, which are, that's one of the only two upgraded weapons we're going to be getting, the other one being the upgraded shotgun. I do find the upgraded shotgun and the upgraded twin pistols to be somewhat overpowered. You could definitely make it through the game with the standard twin pistols and the standard shotgun. It would make the game significantly more difficult, though. But the extra damage the upgraded twin pistols deal is insane, and it will make the other two bosses go by so much faster, which is good because otherwise they would be a little bit frustrating, not because of their difficulty, but because of their length. As you can see, the upgraded twin pistols simply fire a lot faster, which means more damage per second. What's not to love about that? So we can see the floor is corroded in here as well, but instead of it being some sort of strange orange liquid, this time it's green, and we have roots sticking out of the floor, and we also have vines growing out of the grating. So this room may have been destroyed by Fury's roots instead of by whatever weird acid was in the previous level. There's certainly a lot of visual evidence to suggest this. This room is also reasonably fun to platform through, like the other open room with the corroded floor in the last level. You have to think about where you're jumping before you jump, though this one's a little less open than that one. Still fun though, and we get more curved jumping with the hook-based platforming. Hit detection is really lenient, as was previously established, so it's all about when you let go. I maybe would have placed a few enemies in this room personally, but I suppose that would have irritated people while they tried to platform, so that's probably why they didn't do it.
It seems you have found the source of the raw materials used for the biocide. You must be close.
Are you sure this stuff is safe?
That stuff's pretty caustic. Don't get any on you.
This room normally houses the largest fight in the entire level, but we're actually just going to platform past all of the enemies. This is incredibly dangerous as we could easily be shot off of these hooks, but I managed to pull it off. And now we have more Centipede enemies, but these ones don't have the huge metal plating, so we can use our twin pistols to get rid of them. It's kinda neat that they're sniping at us from across this green acid, though. I like that.
You should be able to get a little extra lift if you use your weapon while leaping above that steam.
Hovering across steam to get higher may not seem like such a big deal, but it's actually more organic than the hooks, so it adds an element of uncertainty to the platforming that wasn't there before. You have to decide carefully how long you want to stay in the steam to get the right amount of height for your next transition. Right now the game's just teaching us how it works. And then we're introduced to the toughest platforming so far. We have to use a steam vent, grapple onto a zip line, and then quickly jump off the zip line to make it to safety. It's more complex than anything else we've had to do so far, but it looks like a cakewalk compared to the late platforming in the game. And honestly, after you get a feel for the platforming, it's not all that difficult. It's a good balance that was established in the original PSP game. It feels automated in how forgiving the hit detection is, but there's also just enough player agency that you have to pay attention to your timing. I'm gonna be frank with you about the story for this location. I like the idea of Seep knowing all this stuff about a government research facility, because he's a sketchy guy, a sketchy, weird guy. And this seems like something he would end up in, you know, like a big mess like this, but the details seem to be intentionally kept vague until you actually get to the world of waffles they were mentioning in an earlier cutscene. It's not super clear what this government research facility is for. Seep seemed to think that it was to manufacture an army of plant monsters, but we've seen very little evidence to that effect. We don't fight any plant monsters here, and we're actually here for something that kills plants, not something that helps them. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but it feels like it's intentionally vague. And these are definitely Fury's roots, at least the in-universe narrative seems to suggest that, because those green pods are Fury's. We'll see them later in several other situations under Fury's control, and these roots are indistinguishable from the ones Fury uses. This jump is a little dangerous because we could have easily been shot out of the air by the Centipede.
There it is, the Biocide! Quickly now, grab it!
So in an attempt to show off my sweet skills, I attempt to skip past the combat entirely and just jump over to the Biocide. But that doesn't work out so hot, as you can see. Don't worry, whenever we eventually get up there, everything's gonna be okay. I just need... there we go. No, you know, this is embarrassing. This is probably the worst I've ever played any... okay, there we go.
Nice work!
Try using it on those roots over there. Presto! Worked like a charm.
Good job, Seep. I never thought it'd come to this, but you were right.
Now say it like you mean it.
We're going to need more Biocide to take on Fury. Now, where can we find it?
Dare I ask? Seep, where can we find more Biocide?
The Army has a deal with World of Waffles. They need to have a quick supply of carbs and mapley goodness. Eisenhower signed the treaty.
Treaties are signed with foreign nations, not fast.
Alright, let's try that from the top, but with less death this time.
Seep, where can we find more Biocide?
The Army has a deal with World of Waffles. They need to have a quick supply of carbs and mapley goodness. Eisenhower signed the treaty.
Treaties are signed with foreign nations, not fast food joints.
Put a cork in it, Stig Martha. You don't know anything.
Actually, Seep may well have a point. There is a tunnel that connects this base to the World of Waffles.
Waffles.
Is this making sense to anyone? If you say so, Dead Guppy. To the World of Waffles it is.
I have several problems with the turn the narrative took here. We already knew that World of Waffles was related to the llama farms. That was brought up in that big FMV cutscene that we witnessed earlier. And if Seep knew that the World of Waffles was the best location for Biocide, why did we come to the secret base at all? Why didn't we just head directly to World of Waffles to get the greatest amount of Biocide available right off the bat? This level amounts to filler in terms of story. Sure, the level design and enemy types, they're not filler. The gameplay is perfectly enjoyable, but story-wise, this entire government facility is just filler. And that's kind of depressing. This is the location where the cracks in DJ's writing first begins to show. And the cracks only get wider in the next location, but it's still a little bit frustrating. This is really basic writing stuff. If Seep knew that the greatest concentration of Biocide was at World of Waffles, he would advise them to go to World of Waffles immediately, not wait until they were halfway through the government facility, and then tell them to go to World of Waffles. There's no narrative justification for DJ and Pandora to be in this government facility at all, and it could easily be fixed if they, berated Seep for not bringing up that the Biocide was in World of Waffles the whole time, or if they even remembered World of Waffles had something to do with the government facility, because they seem to be completely amnesiac toward that fact. Really basic writing stuff here, guys. Why should I pay attention to your dialogue if the characters won't even remember their own words?
God, it's full of stars.
What is wrong with you?
Oh dear, I think they might have been exposed to the Biocide.
The light is the dark. The dark is the light.
You're not helping, Seep.
Aye. We'll be lucky if they can figure out how to use a door at this point.
Destination, World of Waffles.
A tram to the World of Waffles? Someone loves their carbs.
Destination, Area 51.
We're nearing the end of the level now, and this is where Death Jr. starts to show its arena shooter roots. We're left in an incredibly small area, and we have to fight a bunch of waves of enemies. You may remember this enemy from in the last level, and it's still a big joke. Easily stun-locked by both our particularly small ham and safety first. The second wave offers one of those projectile-spewing spider robots and a mechanical dog. Absolutely nothing to worry about, especially since they're both easily dispatched with our Nimble monkey bone.
Children under 14 should be accompanied by an adult.
Third wave is more of the same, one more mechanical dog, one more spider robot. We already know how to deal with both of these.
everything.
The gorilla mini-bosses can be genuinely intimidating if you don't have the upgraded twin pistols, but when you do have the upgraded twin pistols, their health practically melts away. Sure, they deal decent damage, but you just back away and jump when they get too close.